Okay, so I think that's working. Okay, so what we're basically going to do here is take a look at what we did in class today. Today is October 4th. Just a bit of recording and, trying to get things working out. So I guess we'll start from scratch. And then basically what we're going to do is add a new track. That is Control-Shift-N. Yeah, so just go to track, that little menu here. Go to new. When you're there, you can create a number of mono or stereo, audio or instrument or whatever tracks you want in samples. So what we basically did today is we created 4 mono audio tracks in samples. You click this add button to add a new track. What we're going to create is a master fader. That's sort of where the mix sums up all these separate audio tracks into one track that is basically your final mix. So we're going to do that as well. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create another track. That's one. And we're going to create a stereo, what's known as an aux track. Now an aux or input, I guess aux track or aux input, is just a way of saying that I can run audio through this track. There's no audio running through it inherently. It's similar to that of it's like just a separate track or a send track, or you can literally send audio to this track in Pro Tools and it will spit something back out. Like if I put an effect on there, like a reverb or delay, it'll spit back out the reverbed signal. So we'll just get into depth more on that a bit later. Okay, so we're going to create. Pro Tools will spawn all these tracks. Notice in here they're all selected. What we can do, I believe, is Alt. And then click, and then none of them will be selected, and you can select them one at a time. They kind of group that way, so it's, at least it's on a Windows, so it's kind of unavoidable. For my workflow, I like moving the master up to the front and the aux, just leaving that at the bottom, kind of leaving the sends off on the right side of the mixer and the master on the left. But whatever workflow you're kind of comfortable with. Hold on, I'm going to get rid of these groups here. Actually, can't quite get rid of them. Regions would probably be much better. There we go. Now we get a lot more space. So now you can kind of see here, this is our master track, and we have 4 audio tracks plus the aux at the bottom down here. Okay, so let's get started in the mix window. Just Control equals will do. And as you can see here, we do have the mix window here. We have several inserts and several sends. Now, we did today record we wanted this to be the kind of the master fader here. So we'll just type that in there. And then the audio tracks, we recorded a vocal and a guitar. And then we just left these kind of empty, so I'll just empty them. And the other one. Oh, let's call it empty 2. That's good enough, I guess. And the aux track, this one is to be our reverb. So we can kind of reverb that. And then in this bottom section here, we can add comments. You get this by, there's kind of a button down here that looks like a bunch of windows. See that right there. It's this thing down here. Just click on it and you get the comments. You can get rid of them, put them back, etc. Let's move that back up there. Okay, so we're good now. I think if we just move this down, take a look at the comments, that's the master track. We had the Vox within a 758. And then we had a guitar, it was a Fender Strat. And good. And then our reverb was just a plain old standard reverb. Okay, it's hard to type with one hand. So then what we did was we routed our I/O into the different inputs here. It seems to have remembered mine. The master route is for each input, and this kind of goes to the master track. It just goes up, down there, and then back down into this fader here. It's kind of the one we want to deal with. But yeah, the input for this one is the mic. The special thing you can do about these is you can right-click on these inputs and rename them to kind of anything you want. So this could be the mic on 1, and maybe if you had a guitar on 2, you could use the guitar, and that would the program would actually remember that. So as you can see right now, we're going to record through the mic in this Vox section, and then the guitar in this other section here. So yeah, that's going to be kind of special. Okay, so kind of setting up this reverb here. You'll notice when we hit record, I'm actually recording again. I'm going to get a delay because I'm kind of monitoring myself, and at the same time, it's like, oh well, you know. So anyway, I'm just going to turn that off for a moment so we don't get that delay. It's on the same sound card anyway, so all right, there we go. What we're going to do is we're going to go to our inserts. We're going to go to a multi-channel plugin, and we're going to put in a reverb. That's this Air reverb thing, Advanced Instrument Research Reverb. You do a nonlinear reverb, which is kind of like more or less a room, and the Spring reverb, which emulates one of these old Spring reverbs in the box, which actually sounded pretty bad, but I don't actually know what the verb is, but we'll just use the Air reverb for now. Notice we start putting things in here, and there's quite a few presets there. This is sort of when the reverb starts once it gets to a signal. So if it's you putting it up at 1 ms, that means it's going to wait a millisecond for the reverb to continue. It's like, this would be considered like the amount of time your voice is traveling through a space before it hits some surface, which it bounces off of, like walls or something. So, you know, when somebody's talking, they're in a giant room, it takes a long time for their voice to get to the back wall, and that's really just the pre-delay, the amount of time it takes for everything to split up at the first point. Room sizes determines how many reflections you're going to have in the room. Like if you're in a cathedral, there's going to be a lot of reflections, and you're gonna hear a lot. Sound like the reverb is pretty much traveling on forever. And if you're in a small room like a hall, or maybe a room where there are drums, the size isn't gonna be very big, so the reverb is kind of gonna die out much faster, because it's probably gonna be a dry room. And let's see. Early reflections I'm not gonna worry about. It's just the width of the ins and outs. Like if I put this in, I can change the width of the reverb so you can hear it more stereo wise, or you want to hear it in kind of the mono, then that's fine. Delay, so the same principle, I guess, delay between the in and the out. Room ambience, that kind of increases it makes it a bit, if you want to take that up, it kind of it makes it a bit more shimmery, I guess, so to speak. Kind of less ambience, there's going to be less shimmer in the reverb. Density, same thing, just less, I guess, more reflections versus less reflections. And you can determine, this is kind of an EQ for the reverb, this whole section down here, how much high frequencies you want to let through and how much low frequencies you want to let through. Looks like the cutoff is about 200 hertz here, and the top is about 9 kilohertz. So yeah, that's about right. That'll give you that mid-range kind of reverb, since it's cutting off both the highs and the lows in the frequency spectrum. We go to the reverb time. This is the length of time it takes for the reverb to die out. Yes, it can go to infinite, and you can kind of control this until you can balance between the early reflections and the reverb tail. You want more reverb tail if you're dealing with probably a longer reverb for more of those crazy effects, and you want more of the early reflections if you're probably dealing with a shorter reverb. But for now, we're just going to balance it, kind of leave it in the center. And then I guess the final thing here is the mix knob. We want this 100% since it's on a send channel. If it was at 0%, we'd be getting all dry signal, and there'd be no reverb on the signal. 50%, there'd be about half the signal would be verbed, and we'd kind of have everything else. So if this was an insert, I'd probably use it at 50%, but we really want to use it at 100% since we're on a send track, and we're just sending a dedicated portion of the signal to the reverb through one of the buses, which I'm going to show you in a minute. So now we're going to set up our reverb. So how we do this is we use these sends, A through E right here. And one of the goals of these sends is allowing you to route pretty much anything to any track. So for instance, what we're going to do now is we're going to find a bus in here, and there's quite a list of buses here. At the top, you will notice that I did name one of my buses Reverb. Think of a bus as like a virtual cable. So what's happening is basically you're putting a cable between this track here and this track here, and you're sending part of the signal to this track, from this track. So basically it says, okay, well, I'm getting dry signal out of the bottom of this track, but I'm getting signal with something else out of the bottom of this track, out of this aux track here. So it's kind of just like you're routing how much ever you want of whatever you've got in one track to another track through the bus, which is like a virtual cable. So we use that virtual cable by saying, hey, if I have an input on the mic here and I want to send part of that signal, that's the whole sends routine here, I'll just click on the send track, I'll click on the bus, and then I'll say to reverb, stereo of course, we're just going to send the entire thing, boom. Notice I get a fader here. It allows me to sort of choose how much I want to send to the reverb. I'm particularly picky about how much, so we can just do -5 or something like that. And that's how much of whatever's going through this track is getting sent to this track, right? So yeah, basically that's kind of what it's like. But unfortunately, what's going to happen now is there's really no sound that's going to go to the reverb because we can't actually, because there's nothing going into it. We've plugged the virtual cable into one track. This is the starting track, and we said, hey, I want a virtual cable that's called reverb that goes from this track. Now we need to route it to another track. So I'm going to take, in essence, our virtual cable concept and make it the input from the bus, which is the input from this reverb. We'll just call it this cable here, to this aux track that has a reverb on it, because we don't actually have anything that has a reverb on it just yet, or if we did, then this is just a plain aux track. It doesn't have to have anything on it. You could put anything on it you wanted, like a reverb and a delay or a chorus or a flanger, whatever you wanted to kind of mess with your signal with. So but all we did was we said, hey, I'm going to take this reverb, which is this virtual cable called reverb, right? I want to send some signal to this virtual cable. And then what I want to do is, right, we said send some signal. Right here, it's -5 dB, I assume that's dBFS. And then we sent it, we plugged the other side of the cable into this aux track, which is the input in this input-output section. We just made that bus called the reverb the input. And basically the output is the master out. So it goes straight to the master track, hands down. Nothing else. Pretty straightforward, I guess. So then we added a reverb to this thing. Now part of this signal that we're sending to this track is going to be reverbed. So if I actually turn this on, oh wow, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, I kind of forgot about that. Okay. So that kind of sounds weird, like in a hall, and I got a little bit of delay between my voice and the other thing. So yeah, just kind of chilling there. And my signal's actually kind of hot there, but whatever. Doesn't really matter at the moment because we're reverbed pretty much. Yeah, and it looks like I'm clipping it at some point. I can actually turn this down just a bit. Okay. So there we kind of go. If you want to put just something on a reverb, I can actually stick inserts in here, or I can stick inserts on the send to make a crazy like reverb delay effect, which would kind of be cool. But anyway. So now we're basically going to record our vocal. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the edit window, control equals. And we're going to come in here and you obviously see the effect is kind of the same. So then we're just going to, all we need to do is record here. Just need to make sure that's armed. This is track record enable. Then we're going to go up here to this side and we're going to hit the record enable. And that allows us to record to anything in this view in Pro Tools. So now we're just going to record. Okay. Recording something, you kind of want to get that sound. Just kind of want to get something recorded, I guess. Okay, so I guess now we're kind of done. So you'll notice that when I play this back, it's going to have oh yeah, I had to mute myself so I wasn't so annoying. Now I just disable that, and then we're going to play the back and see how this sounds. So you're kind of going to notice that vocal with the reverb there. So that's sort of recording our first track. If we wanted to record something else like guitar, we can just plug it into that line. On the back of your inbox, make sure the DI is selected instead of the mic, or else you're going to get a lot of static on that line. That would be quite an issue. I'm just going to go back to kind of what we recorded today in class, and we're going to check that out because there was a guitar part on there. Let's see, go to class session 2. We don't really need to save that session. we did color insert something else. Let's go into our edit window. Notice we have a guitar here. It's got quite a bit of static on there. I mean, I kind of put a few inserts on here. I'm just gonna get rid of all of them. One of the things I will need to do is put a noise gate on there, so that hopefully, what a noise gate does, it'll remove all that static. If we push it down just enough, this threshold knob, we just gotta kind of stick it down. That just means that this channel won't be sending signal to the output unless the input signal here goes above this threshold, which is this yellow knob. It's kind of an adjustment thing. Now notice when the signal went below that little threshold that the noise kind of stopped. You didn't get any more of that static anymore, which is pretty darn good because static is just not cool. So yeah, we just kind of recorded, and then we recorded some vocals. I'd actually do the same here since there's talking in the background. Yeah, so what I would do with that is kind of just, notice I got quite a few things on here. Just delete those. I had a delay on here, which is kind of nice, but right now we're bypassing it. One of the techniques to bypassing an effect is just to use this bypass button right here. It's pretty much on every Artast effect you have. So just click the bypass button, and then none of the signal from that input channel will actually go through it. So right now we'll just insert one of those gates on here now. This expander and gate thing. And notice that there is actually a lot of background noise. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of calibrate this threshold here so that, you know, if we pull it down just enough, we're not going to get any of that background noise. Or if we do get that background noise in the recording, which we are, because you can't like separate out things individually, we're just going to try to use this trick to make it as little as we can. Notice there's background static going in, but as long as this thing doesn't go above the threshold, the signal doesn't go above, I think it's like negative 30 dB at the moment, negative 30 dBFS. If it doesn't go above this point, then we're not going to hear it, which is really cool. This actually might sound good. You notice it kind of got better mixed here. So yeah, that's pretty much it, what we did. And, you know, whatever. I can actually bypass this delay here and kind of hear the delay going there. My voice sounds pretty bad. Anyway, and you'll just notice that, you know, we did the same recording principle for each. We just click this, click the record and enable, and then we hit play. And then whatever input we were recording on, or whatever track we're recording on, suddenly got this audio. So notice I'm recording this on track 1. We can just do that right now. Boom. There it is. So yeah, we can play that back. So yeah, so that's pretty self-explanatory. Now, one of the things I went into with the people in my group today was how to create an instrument track. And that's sort of like, you just go to track, you go to new, you go to stereo, and then you go to instrument. One of the things is you can only really have one instrument on an instrument track at a time, because the MIDI needs to go to that instrument. So, like, I could have the DB33 on here. And in order to play it, I'd kind of need a MIDI keyboard, regardless. I don't currently have one in here, but I did have one set up. You just need to go to the input devices. If your input device is in here, you need to make sure it's checked. And then you just go to MIDI Studio. Notice there's a device in here. The input port currently isn't there, but if I do plug it in, you just change the input port to, like, for example, this is it's actually the MPK25. I just need to change the input port to that, and the input port to the output port to the MK25. And then you're pretty much set to go. And you can just exit out this window and you have MIDI. And I guess that's pretty much it for now. Hope you got some out of it. Let's see if we can